All right, so I know that I am quite a bit late to this, and I do apologize for that. But nonetheless, this is obviously a super important story, and so I did want to talk about it. Now, President Donald Trump has said that he will pull out of Syria. Okay. He announced this on Twitter. He said, "We have defeated ISIS in Syria. My only reason for being there during the Trump presidency." Now, this is something that was super, just, I want to use the word polarizing. I don't know if that's correct or not. There was just a lot of opinions, a lot of stuff resulting from this. Okay. Now, it's more nuanced than you think. So, first, to get out of the way, to make sure you get the point of this, President Trump pulling out of Syria, good. Good. Pulling out of Syria is a good thing. But there is more nuance to this situation than just that. So, first of all, why did he do this? Okay, the reason why he did this was it was reported that the Friday before this week, I believe this was on a Wednesday, the Friday before this week, he had spoken to Erdogan, the president of Turkey. Now, he spoke to him. Erdogan said that he had a really good conversation with him. He spoke to him about a lot of things, and, he was really happy and thought that President Trump took a lot of the stuff positively, and it was just overall a good phone call. So, amazingly enough, that same day, they didn't even try to hide this, by the way. The same day, the U.S. approved a $3.5 billion missile sale to Turkey. So that same day that it was announced that Trump announced that he was going to pull out of Syria, he also announced, hey, we're going, there's a $3.5 billion weapons sale that we're doing to Turkey. Now, this is clearly a situation in which Donald Trump is doing this because of wanting to please Erdogan. Now, this is more of a web than you think. So the weapons sale is very obvious. Part of this sort of exchange, if you will, was the weapons sale, no doubt, a $3.5 billion weapons sale. We know that Donald Trump will do all kinds of stuff for weapons sales. Now, this also has to do somewhat with, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman over in Saudi. Now, what is that connection, you say? Well, remember how Turkey was in massive opposition? They were sort of spearheading what was going on and giving information in terms of what was going on in the whole Khashoggi incident where, he goes to the consulate and, he turns up dead. So Turkey was the one who was, giving out a bunch of information, talking about it, etc., etc. So in exchange for this, now Turkey is going to be nicer on MBS in Saudi Arabia because we know that Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo are big fans of Saudi Arabia and MBS. Now, that's also a very important thing to note, no doubt. So clearly, this is something that is done in an exchange with Turkey for many different things. This is a bad thing, by the way. It's just, quite frankly, is not a good thing. He's doing this because he's being beholden to Turkey and MBS. That is basically what is going on here. So, again, good thing that he pulled out of Syria, but it's also important to talk about why he did it and explain that he's doing this because he's beholden to multiple other governments. People like to say that he's beholden to Russia, but he seems to have been beholden to many other governments that really aren't Russia. I mean, whether it be MBS, whether it be Erdogan now, whether it be Netanyahu before. Before this, he was all beholden to Netanyahu. It's pretty hilarious. It's pretty insane. It's ridiculous. Now, there is one final big point to make here, and it is about the Kurds. Now, the Kurds have been treated like garbage by pretty much everybody, always, especially by Turkey, and the U.S. will backstab them a lot too. The Kurds are the ones often doing most of the fighting against ISIS. They're usually the ones doing the hard work, and then we don't really exchange them with anything. We sort of just, the U.S. just takes its dick and just slaps them in the face. It's pretty fucked up. Now, the Kurds are now in a position where they are going to be vulnerable to an attack by Turkey, Erdogan, and Turkey. This is something that is very, it's just not good. Obviously, it's one thing to, want to as a humanitarian, which is what I think I am, what I consider myself to be, you obviously don't want human life to be lost in an unnecessary situation. Now, we know that this is also part of why Turkey's doing this. They want to go in and to take over the Kurdish-controlled areas of Syria. They're going to massacre them. So, what I think we should do is, it's good we pull it out of Syria, but what we need to do is use all diplomatic canals and routes to prevent this massacre from happening against the Kurds in the Kurdish areas, in the Kurdish-controlled areas in Syria. We shouldn't allow this to happen. Again, like I said earlier, the Kurds are the ones who do a lot of the actual brunt. They bear the brunt of the hard work. And then everyone else reaps the benefits. They don't actually really reap any benefits. As you guys see is what's going to happen here, and that's unacceptable. Now, something else that is very important to note. Rojava is actually a libertarian socialist country, a secular democratic libertarian socialist government. Uber left, really left-wing, super left-wing. So there was a Noam Chomsky opinion that really took a lot of people by storm. Basically, a couple months ago, Noam Chomsky, back in October, I believe it was like October 24th, Noam Chomsky said that he would prefer that there would be a small presence inside of Rojava, Kurdish-controlled areas in Syria, in order to prevent an attack by Turkey. Now, the reason for this mainly is probably because Noam Chomsky likes that, Rojava is a libertarian socialist government, and it's doing pretty well for itself. So that's probably the reason why he wants it there. Now, I think that there were some people sort of misconstruing and misrepresenting what he said is like, let's keep all forces in Syria. But here's what I think. I think that we need to exhaust every single diplomatic possibility, and I firmly do believe this. I really, really do believe that if the United States wanted to, through diplomatic means, through anything that is not force, I believe there is a way that they could stop Turkey from going in and massacring the Kurds. I genuinely strongly believe that there's no way that we don't have, leverage over Turkey that we could exercise in which they will not listen to us. Remember, they're part of NATO, so I believe they're like the second biggest army in NATO. So the point here being is there's no way we can't have leverage over them to where, they will succumb at some point to what we demand, which is don't invade the Kurds, don't massacre the Kurds, don't take over that area, leave them alone. That's what I think we should do. We should pull out of Syria, demand diplomatically that they do not go in and massacre the Kurds, and that is what we should do. Also keep in mind that Turkey is going more towards a sort of Islamist nation. That's sort of where it's going, which is not a good thing by any means. And Rojava is secular, libertarian, socialist, etc., etc., etc. So this is a super nuanced story and situation, more nuanced than some people may have you thinking. I also want to mention, by the way, that the corporate media is super annoying. The corporate media was, going off on Trump and saying, oh, you're weak and blah, 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 blah. And it is something that is super, I want to say, setting a precedent, an interesting precedent, because basically it's Trump bucking the military-industrial complex and sort of the military people inside of his administration. So, Matt has resigned. It's a crazy time. Okay, let's put it that way. It's a really crazy time to be alive. But it's definitely something that's setting a precedent right now that Trump is doing that is shocking a lot of people. But we absolutely need to pull out of Syria. We also had a story, by the way, where Donald Trump said that, we're going to pull out until we leave down, I think he wanted to pull out 7,000, or he wanted to pull away some of the troops that we have in Afghanistan, which I think is also a good idea. It's just a good idea, generally speaking, to move towards diplomacy and pulling out, especially in Afghanistan, because I genuinely don't understand how you could still be a fan of the Afghan war, considering that you've basically had, I've seen reports that say that there are between 40 to 70% controlled lands by the Taliban. So there has to be a different way here, because obviously what we're doing right now is a massive failure, but there is a military-industrial complex which does not want these wars to end, because if they end, these arms sales and the perpetuation of the usage of weapons, and if not using, just stocking up, stockpiling, for maybe even a non-necessity. Just the circle keeps going. The military-industrial complex doesn't want that circle to stop. You want wars to continue so that more weapons are bought and then more weapons are sold. They make more money, and the circle continues going on and on and on. They don't want that to stop. So, in conclusion, basically what I'm trying to say is here, it's good that Donald Trump pulled out of Syria. We should pull out of Syria, but we need to exhaust every single possible diplomatic way to prevent Turkey, which I firmly believe, by the way, that there's no way that we can't stop them diplomatically. It's simply impossible that we don't have enough to diplomatically stop them from massacring and invading the Kurds. There's just no way that I could foresee that happening. It is absolutely ridiculous, that the notion that we can't stop that. So we must stop it. Donald Trump has done a good move here. Not in the best way, by the way. He's doing it because he's beholden to other governments, not because he cares about, anything about the U.S. He's beholden to Erdogan and MBS, etc., etc. So, good move, not in really a good way, or rationale, I should say, because he's doing it and beholden to other governments. I don't disagree with the move. I'm glad he pulled out, but it's important to acknowledge why he's doing it, and it's also important to talk about how, we need to prevent the Kurds from getting massacred. So, that's sort of the situation going on here.